Hello campers, Dr. Dickey here. All right, so I just finished the last pack and I have been capacity testing. I don't know why the cells show up blue when they're really purple, even though, let me turn on light. I have the bright white lights, which should give true color, but for some reason they don't. The cells are actually purple, not blue. But I just finished the last pack, last of the 14 packs that's going to increase the capacity by half again, get me from 400 amp hours to 600 amp hours. And I've been capacity testing them, and they're coming through, as expected, 200 amp hours. But I wanted to do a little review. I think I mentioned before, I got this cheap capacity tester from China. They're like $30. And they offer a great, simple way to do capacity testing. You just hook up a couple lead wires to your batteries. For me, I just put these gator clips on the end of it. And you just hook those up to the battery. You plug this thing in. It has a little wall wart for 6 volts or something like that. And then you turn these dials for the amperage you want to come out. I think they do up to 150 volts. And you do the amperage that you want, and then you just let it run and it will measure the capacity. But there are some problems with it, and let's see exactly what those are. All right, it's going to be obnoxious because it keeps telling me that it's below the 2.9 volts that I have it set to. But this is the screen you get when you first turn it on. And then you hook up your battery, and let me do that. Well, that'll help. That'll make it stop making that obnoxious sound. So, first things first, hook it up. And it shows the voltage of the battery. Let me see if I can get in there a little bit closer. So hopefully now you can see that screen. It's going to be a little bit blurry just because I don't have the best camera in the world. So it says, okay, so you hook it up to the battery. Like I said, I'm just using these gator clips. And that gives me a battery voltage of 4.02 volts. So that's the first problem is, if I use a DMM that I trust, and this is DMM that I trust, and I hook this up, now of course it's not going to fit into the screen. If I hook this up to the battery, I get an actual voltage of 4.15 volts rather than the 4.02 volts. So it's about 100 millivolts off or so to begin with. So you think, okay, well, 100 millivolts, that's not a big deal. That won't be a game killer or anything like that. Let me zoom in again. That's to start with. So then let's say I'm going to test the capacity. So to test the capacity, I'm going to reset everything. You can see the last one I tested was 195, and that's still basically 200. And the amp right now is basically 0. So I'll turn the amperage up. I get 6 amps, 11 amps. 11 amps is about what I get. But now look at the voltage reading. The voltage reading is 3.58 volts. So it dropped down almost half a volt, dropped down 0.6 volts from what it was originally reading. And yet the voltage of the battery, which will drop a tiny bit, let's see what that is. The voltage of the battery, if I measure it now, is still 4.1 volts. So the voltage of the battery dropped down about I don't know, 10, 15 millivolts. That's due to the internal resistance that we get in the battery pack. That's to be expected. And, you know, 100 millivolts, that's not a big deal. But a half a volt is, because you set the low voltage cutoff on here. Let me see if I can get to that menu. It's a little bit wonky because you got to push stuff to get to here. And there's my high voltage cutoff. I don't know why they have a high voltage cutoff, because you can't charge a battery with this. You can only discharge it. Then my low voltage cutoff. Let me go through it all again. It's a little bit, like I said, it's a little bit wonky. Low voltage cutoff, right now I have it set it for 2.9. And the reason for that is, like I said, it drops down about a half a volt, almost a half a volt, when you do a draw on it. So, come out here again. So I know what you're saying. You're saying, but wait, Dr. D, the problem with that is, look at the connections you're using. You're using these cheap Gator clamps to go on there, and that's where you're getting your voltage drop. It's in your wires. You have like a 12 gauge wire that's hooked up to it. That's certainly not big enough to do what you want to do. Okay, fair enough. So what did I do? And look how long those wires are. So I made up these, which are much bigger, and they have 8 gauge wire on them. So 8 gauge wire, shorter distance. I'm going to hook those up, and let's see what the drop is. Okay, I have it hooked up with the new clamps with 8 gauge wire, very short run. And of course, the first thing we notice is, zoom in here, first thing we notice is the voltage is still reading 4.02 volts when it really is 4.1 volts. So that's to start with. It's at a little weird angle because the leads I made were so short that I want to make sure that I get them in the shot. Okay, so now let's up the amperage coming out. And the voltage doesn't drop down as far. It's not as bad. It goes from 4 to 3.95. So certainly most of that drop was over the wire. The problem is it's still reading about 0.1 volts lower than it actually is. So that's why I have it set to 2.9. So I'm going to let that go. So this does pretty good, but you have to make sure you put really high gauge wire on there. Not for what it comes with. It comes with this little, I don't know what it was, 14 gauge wire or something, but you can't do that. You really got to put a high gauge wire on it. And you have to really have good connectors to connect it. And then you can get some decent results out of them. And it is super easy. Like I said, you just hook it up, crank up the amperage coming out, let it run, and it will measure the capacity. So that's my review of these. I actually got another one ordered. They're about $30 to $35 from China. If you get it on Amazon, it's going to cost you another $10 or something. So if you can wait the time, it's worth it to just wait the time and get it for a cheap price. I got another one coming because when I get my lithium iron phosphate cells, I'm going to want to capacity test all of them. Like I said, so far I've capacity tested these, the packs that I put together, and they've all tested just about right at 200 amp hours. And of course that's going from 4.1 volts down to about 3.1, because this will cut off and then come back to 3.1 rather than 4.2 to 3.0. And so I've easily, and it gives me like 195 or 198 amp hours. So easily I'm getting the 200 amp hours I expect out of them. All right, just wanted to do a quick video showing you that and why you have to put good quality connections on this if you want to get accurate results easily from these systems. I got another video coming out. I should show you the iCharger. It does a much easier job because you can capacity test them and then recharge them. And that's what I use to recharge these things, is the iCharger. And I probably will go through and try and do a video showing you how to do the settings in it, because there aren't a lot of videos showing people how to do the settings. And it is a little bit convoluted to do the settings on those things. But they are a pretty good pretty good thing to use.
All right, just a quick update. The capacity testing is done, and let's see what we got. It shows that we have 196.24 amp hours, and it currently says it's at 3.05 volts. Of course, this reads about 100 millivolts lower than what it actually is. I set the cutoff at like 2.9, and this cutoff, it was running about 10 amps, and it cut off, and of course the capacity comes back up a tiny bit. So it went from 4.1 to 3.0, and that is giving me 196 amp hours, which is the 200 amp hours I expected if I had gone from 4.2 to totally 3.1 or whatever. So yes, I'm with the new leads, 8 gauge wires that I've put on this, and the new leads going to the pack. I am very, very happy. What is the actual voltage? I still think this measures a little bit lower than what the actual voltage is. So if I put it on the DMM and measure this, I should turn on that other light. Sorry, it's a little bit. Got some shadows here. It's showing 3.07. So actually that's giving a very, very close determination of the actual potential, the actual voltage that the pack is at. So yeah, because it's showing 3.05 as opposed to 3.07. It's still much closer than I thought it was given before. So yes, I'm very happy with this now. I'm actually glad now that I picked up another one of these, because when I get my lithium iron phosphate cells in next month, I want to be able to capacity test those, obviously, to make sure that I am buying grade A packs, and that they are coming through at 280 amp hours for each pack. So that's just a wrap up for these testers. I didn't want to besmirch these testers because they actually are pretty doggone good and give very, very good results. It was more my leads that I had that were causing the problems rather than the actual tester itself. Anyway, next video will be coming up in about, well, probably be 3 weeks because I'll have to edit it and everything. But I will be doing the upgrade for the system to add in these new packs to the battery. And so I'll bring you along for all of that. Okay? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.